An Occupy Chapel Hill participant.
Welcome. So I was just going to be introduced to Occupy Chapel participant, but I'm going to have to address my other identity. I am a graduate student, and I'm actually happen to be one of the graduate students that put forward the word privatization as something we need to talk about in this space. So I think we need to talk about that for a minute. But to get something out of the way, something that really rather inconsequential, we do have this guy Roger. He's come up a couple times today, and I just want to get him off the table. So really quick, who the fuck is Roger? This is the guy who investigated the Yates attack and decided that not only was it just, but it was exemplary. This was great city management. The only thing he asked for people to do with his memorandum was to pass it around more, to further spread the compliments of our wonderful police force here in Chapel Hill. Now, one thing that's come up in talking about Roger is his job has been described as the CEO model of city government. Now, it sounds pretty bad, but I think it's pretty accurate. So we have a system where we have elected certain people into office, and they have ceded their power to a privately paid manager. So I want now we can be done with Roger for a minute, and we can talk about more important things. So it's already come up that a lot of the attacks we're seeing against the Occupy movement right now, and against free speech and freedom to assemble, and our basic human rights more generally, are coming from the top down. I'd like to point out that the top is moving. That our top is not only our governmental structures. We are not only looking up the chain of government as we're looking down the gun of an automatic weapon. We are also looking up chains of exchange. We're looking up the chain of capital. This is why we need to use the word privatization. We are now, I want to use another strange word, another graduate student type concern maybe. We all fought against, many of us fought against the internet restrictions that were coming upon us in this last month. Well, we did a great job because we're good at fighting locally, but sometimes we forget. Sometimes we start thinking that issues like that guy Roger, are our problem. Like we can form a safe place to speak here, as if we have founders that have given us rights that we can defend in this place, in this country, and that's enough. Well, we're not fighting against ACTA yet. The much larger, much more frightening Anti-Counterfeiting Act that has been signed by 22 European nations this week, has been signed by the European Union as a whole, and which Obama signed in October. I didn't know. I was concerned with the things that were happening here. I was concerned with things that I thought I had founders protecting. I thought I had some ghosts behind me here in the United States. Turns out it's not the case. The top is moving. And it's moving because of privatization. So our right to assemble, our right to speak, cannot be fought for here as Chapel Hill. Chapel Hill is a place to stand. We have already agreed, as Occupy Chapel Hill, we reject being corralled into free speech zones. We will not make Chapel Hill a big free speech zone. We will not make the United States a place where people can speak freely and let there be fences at our sides beyond which people cannot speak at all. This is where we are. These are the people we know. There is a man to make us angry and a cause to get us thinking about this much larger issue. But we are only doing our fight if we are fighting from here and we are fighting against those fences, bounding us in as if this is a special place. We are a special kind of being. Humans have a right to assemble and we have a right to resist. Hello.
I've been organizing with Croatan Earth First for a number of years now. I just moved here about 4 years ago. And one of my first experiences with Chapel Hill was we tried to hold a demonstration and found that we were in violation of a noise ordinance. So we put away our bullhorn and we started again. And then we were told we were in violation of a noise ordinance. And when we finally asked them if we could see this noise ordinance, it included everything from whistling to singing to chanting, clapping. Really anything that we could do on that sidewalk was illegal. And Carborough has a similar law, where everything is left up to police discretion as to what is disruptive. And this is not accidental, this is intentional. Because depending on what you think laws are for, this makes a lot of sense, right? The purpose of laws is to quash dissent and social control. And so to leave them as vague as possible, right, these confusing laws, they're not confusing because a child wrote them or because they were written hastily, right? They are confusing so as to be pliable. Similarly, the 2x2 sign ordinance has been used against us numerous times here in Chapel Hill. Many of these signs, that sign's illegal. The banner back there, that's illegal. Any banners you may have, that sign over there, that's illegal. So, welcome my fellow criminals. But, so, like I said, selective enforcement is the purpose of laws, right? This isn't just protest laws. This is why drug laws are here too. Judging by many of the faces in the crowd, I'll say that probably very few of us have been to prison for drugs. But probably most of us have used them, right? And there are millions of nonviolent drug users in prison right now. So we know that these are selectively enforced laws. And we know why they're selectively enforced.
Racism.
So to oppose selective law enforcement is to oppose laws. What we are opposing here is the ability for people who happen to have a blue suit and a badge to put guns in our faces, regardless of what it is we do. And while I do think that these laws will change from actions that we take, I'm not so sure that those actions have to do with town council meetings. This coming from someone who's been to a number of town council meetings, because I also think that we should exhaust all possible options, since if there's a friendly way to do this, that's probably better. With that said, I don't have a lot of faith in the town council, a couple exceptions possible, right? They were on the wrong side of the sanitation 2 issue, they were on the wrong side of Greenbridge, and now they're on the wrong side of the Yates. All right, and that's just in my 4 years that I've been politically aware in this town. All right, I have no idea how far back that goes. It sounds like they haven't been much help to the Rogers Road folks either. Carborough is not that much better, unfortunately. Mark Chilton is one of a number of politicians who have tried to take the really, really free market from us in the past, right? And then has the audacity to try to organize a march from there. So I think we see where politicians go, right? Politicians go where they can. I think these laws will be overturned when we publicly show that they are unenforceable, and their unenforceability brings into question their legitimacy at that point. Because if a law is unenforceable, then the legitimacy of the state is in question. If they cannot enforce the laws, and that is when laws get overturned, right? So the really free market didn't become legal because we asked Mark Chilton. It didn't become legal because we tried to negotiate with the police. It became legal because we kept it and we defended it and we kept showing up through both brazen and sneaky tactics. We legalized the really, really free market. It is still an illegal gathering every single month. Right? It's not actually legal. There is still no permit for it. We still take that space every single month. And similarly for here, right? We can ask them to let us do things, but the answer will usually be no. And one of my favorite sayings in my last decade of activism has become that it is easier to ask forgiveness than permission. But I'm also done asking for forgiveness. Right? like Brian said, the initial occupation, we took. We took it, and they thought that enforcing those laws would look really, really bad and be a PR nightmare. Right? MLK Boulevard for the anti-police march, we didn't have a permit to take that entire street, but we did. And clearing us would have been a PR nightmare. And this demonstration, we've taken this space again. And we will get only what we take. And we will keep only what we defend. And anything else will be taken from us. And we see from Mark Stansel's comments that all the negotiation that we tried to do with the police over this whole time, and all the negotiation that we tried to do with the town council, has not been in good faith bargaining. They've been waiting us out. They've been waiting for their strategic moment to crush us and to marginalize us. Okay? So understanding that when we were talking to them, they weren't listening to us, they were waiting for us. I lived in DC for a number of years, and in DC, if you have 50 or more people, it is legal to take the street and march. The police started trying to harass various protests that did this, and so they started weekly marches, just for the sake of it, to make it very clear and so that they could have their test cases in protests that were not around certain issues, right? They intentionally went and enforced those laws against the police. Understanding how police interact at protests is important as well, right? Police rely on a wide variety of vague laws, but they're also not above making up laws as they go. One of the things that really shocked me when I started protesting regularly with Earth First was that police will come up and tell you that you need a permit somewhere that you don't. They will come up and tell you that you're breaking a noise ordinance that you're not. And it's your responsibility to know that you have the right to be there. And I've heard a lot of people defending the police, but the question is a police officer who knows that he's lying to you about the law, what is he doing? Right? He knows he's not enforcing the law. He knows he's not doing his job as a good cop, except he is doing his job. Because the police officer's job is to enforce social order. And laws may or may not work in that, and when it doesn't, those laws are not relevant. And when those laws happen to be on their side, then those are the laws that are enforced. But understanding that the function of police is not just to enforce laws, it is to enforce social order. And the speaker before me made a wonderful point that banks don't evict people. Cops evict people. Banks don't put guns in people's faces and force them out of their homes. Cops do that. Police wake up every single morning with a choice as to whether or not they will put a gun in someone's face that day, and every single day they make the choice to do that if that is what happens that day. Right? On some level, capitalism is coercion. And you can be threatened with starvation and you can be threatened with homelessness, but you also make the choices that you make. I work in a warehouse, right? But if I came in one day and my boss said to me, hey, kick this homeless guy off the stoop and give him a ticket for loitering, I would probably quit my job because that's not what I do. That's not me. That went a bit out of order and I'm done. Thank you.
Colin Carr. He's an anarchist poet, and he's occupying a tent here, and he was recently arrested and went on a hunger strike.
Thank you, everyone. My name's Colin Carr Momeyer. I've been living in White River Junction, Vermont for the past 5 years before Occupy started, in a beautiful arts community where I did environmental organizing and alternative mental health, mad movement organizing, and intentional community organizing on a daily basis. And I made it to Occupy Boston on October 2nd. As an organizer, I tented for 9 days. I went back to Vermont for a month and kept protesting in Vermont. On November 5th, I gave up everything. But it wasn't the material things that mattered, it was the community and the civil disobedience that ripped me apart there. So I went to Boston November 5th with nothing, with my house in my pockets. Because I've been homeless on and off since 16 years old, going back 15 years. So what system is this when it's just designed for those it's working for? And I made a sign that said that in Vermont. Eventually we went to DC. 46 states of occupiers were brought to occupy DC from around the country by the SEIU unions. 55 Occupy Boston people went on a bus together by the unions, the SEIU union. I was there when we took K Street under the top lobbyist firms of the country. Through Citizens United, put unprecedented billions in the backs of politicians' pockets. We took 4 consecutive intersections and held them for 3 hours. I was dragged 30 feet by police officers after being zip-cuffed on the ground in the rain. And we had objects in that street. We were laying down on couches and standing on newspaper boxes. And we had the first national occupied jail GA that I know of for the men, because they segregate you. And the paddy wagon was great. And then I made it to Raleigh because I was on the verge of walking pneumonia. Occupy DC is a cold, ugly place to be homeless in the winter or at any time. Where do you go to the bathroom in DC, in downtown DC, if you live in a tent or on their grates? There's nowhere. You go in a museum and go through security. There's nothing there for anyone but the elite and the divide of the poor. So I made it to Raleigh. I met up. The day I got there at 5 in the morning, sprinklers were going off on Capitol Hall lawns, or whatever, Capitol lawn. Grass, green grass, we don't see that. I've been in New England too long. I met Paul, who's out here somewhere, I don't see him, but from Occupy Wall Street, a refugee as well, who left with the Occupy marchers who had walked from Occupy Wall Street to DC and made it in Raleigh the day I arrived there in the afternoon, and were taken down, 6 of them, in their own civil disobedience of not leaving the street. Sarah was dragged or tackled or such by cops as holding the American flag. The same thing happened in Boston on the Veterans for Peace when 141 people were taken down. So my conflict with the police is based on the fabric through which they tear through my life, my communities, the urban communities of this country, of minorities, of the barrios, of queer communities and activists who can go home after a march. So I went to Durham with the Occupy marchers. I didn't walk. I was still pretty sick. I didn't have a voice. But the freedom in this movement is inexorable, because we're not returning to meaninglessness, bureaucracy, mazes of police violence, and militarization of the world again. And you're not allowed to say that before the Occupy movement to your friends, never mind in a public square, because of shadow forces of law enforcement agencies. Because I prefer a higher moral order than a violent society. And that means you can, if I'm going to break the law, then you'll have to break the enforcement of it on my back. Because even though the law may be inflexible or blind, human beings are not. All human beings are not. And I wrote a little thing, too, a little short piece of a poem. My tent's the anarcho-poet. I'm one of very few people left here. And this little phrase says, I resist, immediately and non-violently on every level at any time. And if they cannot see mine or others' humanity, then we will train them in it, until it bleeds through us unmistakably. Thank you.